I thought it was the kind of joke that would disappear into the evening air with an awkward laugh. Instead, it changed two broken lives forever. One careless sentence, one silent glance, and one walk down a quiet hallway led me to a truth that would haunt me and heal me for the rest of my life. Before we continue, if you love emotional stories about kindness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. The only bright spot in my neighborhood was my next-door neighbor, Emily. She had moved into the small house across the driveway about a year earlier. She always smiled politely, watered the flowers every evening, and waved whenever our schedules crossed. She lived alone, rarely invited visitors, and never seemed interested in explaining her past. There was sadness behind her smile that reminded me of my own reflection. Over time, we developed an easy friendship. Sometimes I repaired a leaking faucet or carried heavy grocery bags into her kitchen. She baked muffins she claimed always turned out too sweet, though I secretly loved every bite. Neither of us crossed any invisible line. We were simply two lonely neighbors helping each other survive ordinary days. One warm Friday evening, after helping her replace a broken bedroom window, we stood outside laughing about how terrible both of us were at making jokes. The conversation drifted toward relationships. She teased me for spending more time fixing roofs than finding another wife. Trying to sound funny instead of vulnerable, I shrugged and casually said that maybe I should just marry my neighbor and save myself the trouble of dating. The smile disappeared from her face. She looked at me for several long seconds, searching my eyes as though she wanted to know whether I understood what I had just said. Without speaking a single word, she reached for my hand. I expected another joke. Instead, she gently led me inside her house, through the quiet hallway, and into her bedroom. My heart pounded with confusion. Nothing about the moment felt romantic. The room was spotless, peaceful, and filled with soft evening light coming through the curtains. She walked toward a wooden dresser, opened the top drawer, and carefully removed a small velvet box. She placed it in my hands. Inside rested a simple silver wedding ring. Under it was a folded hospital bracelet. Beside those lay several faded photographs of a smiling man holding Emily's hand. Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she finally spoke. She explained that 5 years earlier, she had been engaged to the love of her life. They had planned their wedding down to the smallest detail. 1 month before the ceremony, he was diagnosed with an aggressive illness. Within 8 months, he was gone. The wedding ring had never been worn. The bedroom had remained almost exactly the same ever since. She couldn't throw away the memories, but she also couldn't move forward. Then she admitted something I never expected. She hadn't brought me into the room because she wanted to accept my joke. She wanted me to understand why it hurt. Every time someone joked about marriage, it reminded her of everything she had lost. Tears quietly rolled down her face, not with anger, but with exhaustion. She said she had smiled through years of loneliness because people became uncomfortable around grief. Eventually, pretending to be okay became easier than explaining why she wasn't. Standing there, holding the ring of a man I had never met, I felt ashamed. I apologized with all my heart. She nodded gently and thanked me for listening instead of trying to fix her pain. That evening, we sat on the bedroom floor talking for hours. Not about romance, not about dating, simply about loss. For the first time since losing my daughter, I spoke openly about the tiny nursery we had painted together. I confessed that I still kept one unopened box of baby clothes hidden in my closet because throwing it away felt like saying goodbye forever. Emily didn't interrupt. She didn't offer advice. She simply understood. Something changed after that night. Not suddenly. Not magically. But honestly. Instead of pretending to be strong, we allowed ourselves to be human. Some evenings we drank coffee on the porch without saying much. Other days we visited the local animal shelter just to play with dogs that desperately wanted affection. We planted flowers where old weeds had taken over her backyard. We celebrated tiny victories, like finishing a difficult work week without feeling completely overwhelmed by memories. Slowly, laughter returned. Real laughter. Months passed before either of us mentioned relationships again. This time there were no jokes. Only quiet honesty. One autumn afternoon we volunteered together at a community home repairing damaged apartments for elderly residents. Watching Emily patiently help an elderly woman arrange family photographs on freshly painted walls, I realized something important. Love wasn't always fireworks. Sometimes love looked like showing up, listening, remaining, choosing kindness even when your own heart still carried scars. That realization frightened me because I knew I was falling in love again. I didn't tell her immediately. I waited until I was certain it wasn't loneliness speaking. Winter arrived. Snow covered the neighborhood in peaceful silence. On Christmas Eve, I knocked on her door carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate and a small wooden box I had built myself in my workshop. Inside wasn't an engagement ring. It was the silver ring she had shown me months before. I had carefully polished it until it shined again. Beneath it rested a handwritten letter thanking the man who had loved her first, because his kindness had shaped the woman who had unknowingly helped save my life. Emily cried harder than I had ever seen. Then she gently closed the box. She placed it back on the shelf. And for the first time since we met, she reached for my hand first. A year later, when I finally asked her to marry me, there were no jokes. There was no fear. Only 2 people who understood that healing doesn't erase the past. It teaches you how to carry it together. She smiled through happy tears and quietly whispered yes. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. There were no expensive decorations or luxurious venues. Just close friends, neighbors, fresh flowers from the backyard we had planted together, and 2 empty chairs with white roses placed upon them to honor the people we had loved and lost. Those empty chairs weren't symbols of sadness anymore. They were reminders that love never truly disappears. It simply changes the people who continue living. Today, whenever someone asks how we met, Emily always laughs before telling the story. She says the worst joke she ever heard became the greatest blessing of her life. And every single time, I silently thank fate for leading me down that quiet hallway where I expected romance, but instead found something infinitely more valuable. I found understanding. I found forgiveness. I found hope. If this story touched your heart in any way, please don't scroll away without letting us know. Special request: comment below with the words "Second chances are real" if you believe kindness and understanding can heal even the deepest wounds. And if this story made you smile, cry, or remember someone you loved, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your support helps us continue sharing heartfelt stories that remind the world that even after unimaginable loss, love can still find its way home.